What is up, everybody? Welcome on in to episode number 3 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I am your host, Kyle Roscoe, and thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. I know we just had a massive show for PEGASUS weekend as the flagship show here on the HHH Racing Podcast. So thank you to everybody for watching that, and hopefully a few of you come over here for Bettin N Boozin. It's going to be an absolute fun time because we're here at championship weekend for the NFL. And not only that, we're also going to be covering part of the PEGASUS World Cup weekend on Friday at GULFSTREAM Park. We're going to be covering the late pick 4 this weekend at GULFSTREAM Park, as I said. And welcome on in, everybody. Like you said, you can follow me on Twitter at AP Roscoe K. As some of you may know, that is Arlington Park Roscoe K. As you all know, the former Prince of Arlington myself, as I like to call myself. So the email right there is at the bottom of the screen. It is Bettin N Boozin. No G's, Bettin at the letter N, Boozin at gmail.com. Please email me with anything any concerns, any questions, anything you have, please email me. If you are new or you find yourself coming back anyway and you aren't subscribed yet, please go down below the video player and hit subscribe. It lets us know that we're doing a good job, and it lets YouTube know that this is a great show, and it will start recommending it to other people. Same thing with the like button. If you are like what you're viewing, please hit that like button. Again, it will let YouTube know and the YouTube algorithm know that this is a show that people want to watch. So please hit that like button. While you're down there, again, hit that notification bell so you never miss any of our content at all. And if you're an audio listener, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. There's going to be a big show coming on this Saturday, both for audio and video listeners, video especially, where we're going to be live from the Crazy Poor OTB in Villa Park, Illinois for your PEGASUS Pool Party Day. And that's going to be an absolute massive, and it's going to be a ton of fun. It's going to be an over 2-hour long show talking about live analysis about everything happening at GULFSTREAM Park with the last 3 races on Saturday for the PEGASUS World Cup. Please, if you are interested, please check that out. Me and myself, Howard Kravitz, and another really good horse player in Matt Miller is going to be there. So please, if you're interested, go check that out. We have also a horse racing power picks. It is a very, very affordable $4 a weekend, $16 a month, charged monthly through Patreon. We had a 2.59 ROI, which is almost $1 over the national average. So if you are interested, please go to patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. It is also in the description below the video player if you're interested in an affordable horse racing tip sheet with everything you'll need to know about about 2 cards on Saturday. Please check that out. It'd be greatly appreciated. And also, our great co-host Pete Visco for the flagship show has created a really nice website which has previous versions of the power picks if you want to check those out. Also, it has about us and all that type of stuff. So if you're interested, please go to hhhracingpodcast.com. Now, I think that kind of covers everything. So again, just to intermingle here, we are going to go over our last week and see how all of us did last week, not only with horse racing, but with mainly about the sports that are going to lead into this conference championship game. And we're going to go over the conference championships and the late pick 4 at GULFSTREAM Park. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on my other co-host here. Patrick is running a little late as he works. Obviously, he works, so he's in traffic coming back from New York, and that could take 15 minutes or 5 hours, as we all know in New York. But I do have my good friend from Ohio State University here, Charlie Freeman. Charlie, what's going on?
Not much. Good to be here. Very excited to get into today's stuff.
Absolutely. And obviously, like I said, this is going to be an absolutely massive show. Championship weekend is a place. It's obviously right before the Super Bowl, so everyone is looking forward to this weekend. One of the most watched sporting event in U.S. every single year, not only for the sports, but, commercials as well. But we'll get all that as we get closer to the Super Bowl. It's just going to be a ton of fun. And Charlie, I want to start with you kind of going over what things you noticed last week. And I know you have some strong opinions on some games last week. Not that some that you were right on and some you weren't so right.
No, absolutely. So for starters, I want to give a shout out to Penn State Scott in the comments saying that teasers are for suckers, because that kind of leads into the first thing I want to talk about, which is I very passionately stated that I loved my teaser that I gave out, which was the Jaguars to cover on a 3-point teaser with the under. I thought the over was suspect. I thought it was crazy. A lot of people love betting overs just for fun, and because why would you not want to root for points? So when that over got crazy high, people kept pushing it up. I thought it was like a college football over and crazy. I know, unfortunately, our co-host, who's not here yet, his best bet was the over in that game. So I had a lot of smoke coming against me from Patrick in the comments, and I nailed it spot on. So I do want to start out by gassing myself up because there's some other stuff I do have to admit that I got all wrong. But no, it was a crazy weekend. I also know for our co-host, Patrick, was a little frustrating because which we did talk about as one of the two options. I know we all kind of said that either the Eagles-Giants game was going to come down right to the wire, or if the Eagles pounced early, this game would be over before we knew it. That is what happened. I'll raise my hand. I know I was one who was on the Giants. I didn't think they would let it get away early, but they did, so I got to own it. And then obviously for the AFC, I mean, man, that's where I really had to take one on the chin. Well, actually, I guess, the two Sunday games is where I have to take one on the chin. Everyone was betting the Bengals and everyone was betting the 49ers. I thought Vegas was going to win. All my friends were on those teams as well. Thought it was too obvious, too good to be true. They never win, but they did. I got to own up to it. Bengals, I just got completely wrong. Again, put my hand up. Bills got completely dominated from start to finish. I think the Bengals are the most legit and complete team in the NFL right now. I stand on my decision on the Cowboys. I said it was going to be a low-scoring defensive battle. It was. I thought Dak Prescott was the better quarterback, which he is, but he did not play like it. His costly turnovers screwed them. It should have been a game that came down to a field goal. It should have been a game the Cowboys won. But the part of me that hates the Cowboys can't help but laugh at them. But so, yeah, I mean, I feel like obviously you could add. I feel like that's a decent fired up recap of last week's game.
Absolutely. Yeah, Stephen A never I always look forward to one time a year with Stephen Smith, and it's when the Cowboys lose inevitably in the playoffs after winning obviously, but again, the NFC East was not, obviously it didn't come up soft this year like it normally does. I mean, it had the best team in the NFC record-wise, plus the Giants made the playoffs, and obviously they made the playoffs as well. But there's always when Stephen Smith he goes, like, he posts that video on Twitter of him laughing and he's got the cowboy hat on and shit. Oh my god, it's so great. I mean, as a fellow Cowboys hater myself, it always hits home for me, so it's definitely funny. But yeah, I mean, great pick with the Jaguars. But again, you didn't even need the points, right? Because the teaser was...
if I didn't do the teaser, they both, the under and the Jaguars to cover, both hit without it.
Yeah, to which, again, you did get a lot of heat for that because, I mean, everyone thought the Chiefs were just going to absolutely roll, which, again, credit to the Jaguars. But with the Chiefs and who they are, they probably should have, realistically, being that team, who the Chiefs have versus who the Jaguars had. Again, no discredit to the Jaguars at all, but, it might probably look that way on paper. But again, credit to you for having that. And obviously, I had the 49ers to cover and all that type of stuff. So, pretty decent on the sports front here. Hopefully for these two conference games, we can give you those best bets that are hidden this weekend. Let's try and go to a little bit of comments here. Howard, again, the young man had to say he needs a teaser. I'm sure Charlie, I'm calling him the king of teasers now. That's what he gave out last week. That's what he probably was going to give out this week. I'm calling him the king of teasers. He'll give you one for sure. Jose, thanks so much from Venezuela. I greatly appreciate you checking out the show. Hopefully you have places to watch. Or if you're an NFL watcher, hopefully you have places to watch down there. Jose, again, thank you so much for joining the show. I really appreciate it. Penn State Scott says Eagles. We'll get into that. I know Charlie has a strong opinion in that game. And Ralph Conti, buy Eagles, buy. But we'll see how it goes in the opinion. And then again, Howard responding to, and then A-Roth, can't wait for the Jets to be in the AFC Championship next year with Aaron Rodgers. Charlie, you want to try and expound on that one, my friend?
Yeah,
I know you do.
I'd love to hit it. Well, no, the reason why it's so funny to me, right, is so all my friends in college that I live with are from New York or New Jersey. And I have a bunch of Jets fans, and they're all saying the same delusional thing. You're not getting Aaron Rodgers. You don't have a quarterback. You didn't figure it out. You passed on Justin Fields so that he could become the Bears franchise quarterback and went with a guy who's known for getting MILFs and nothing more. You made a mistake. Your franchise is screwed. Now, you hit Garrett Wilson because he went to obviously, wide receiver he's going to be a stud. You hit on Michael Carter the year before. You hit on Sauce. You hit on Breece Hall. You did a lot of things right, but you need a quarterback to win in this league. See, now, you know what, hey, Ralph, I can rock with that comment. Derek Carr is significantly more realistic. I think he kind of is what you guys would need. I don't think Rodgers would get on board with that. I know Joe Flacco is elite still. Obviously, he's still like in his prime. He's one of the best in the business. He did pull off that crazy win against the Browns for the Jets. I hate to break it to you, A-Roth, though. I don't think Flacco's the answer. So I do think Carr's a more realistic option.
But realistically, they don't need the guy that loves moms. He's frankly a prick, basically.
Yeah,
but we all know.
Oh yeah, he won't take any responsibility either.
No, absolutely not.
So interesting when Justin Fields plays his heart out. with 5 Walmart employees blocking him, 1 good receiver, and 3 guys that they found at a local tryout from guys playing intramurals. He takes all the blame in the world, and the fact that their defense had 2 good players who they both traded. So he's basically playing with a bunch of guys who he's probably just meeting each week. Meanwhile, Zach Wilson has weapons all around him and a great defense and a great coaching staff all established. He has everything except for himself. And yet he looks at when Sam Darnold was seeing ghosts out there and tries to not take the blame.
Yeah, which again, the Jets were definitely hurt. Just to piggyback in a little bit, the Jets were definitely hurt by Breece Hall getting injured, who had a really great start to the year. And granted, again, that team realistically is only getting better. But again, the meme will live with the Jets until they make the playoffs and win a playoff game.
Absolutely.
The meme will always be there. But honestly, they do need a quarterback. In Carr, realistically, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But Penn State Scott said he wouldn't bet the Chiefs over under with Schiller's money, which I am not touching that game. Or no, am I? I don't remember if I am or not. I think I might, actually. I think I am taking the over in that game, but we'll talk about it as we go. Eric Anderson has a good question, though, that we'll bring up before we go on. What's your opinion on taking point totals and teasers? Charlie,
I'd love to hit on that.
King, that's all.
Absolutely. I'd love to hit on that, Eric. So I would say for sure, well, now admittedly, you do have to kind of nitpick your way through it. Like, for last week, that was the teaser I gave out. Obviously, there were 4 games, and that was the only one I had a strong opinion enough to do a teaser. So you do need to navigate it. Like, the advice I would give for me personally is, again, looking at the over, under, looking at what the number is, looking at what the public's doing, looking at recent games, evaluating the matchups on offense and defense. Obviously, you could just kind of look at it and just take a guess, but it's really hard to tell. But what I will say is my opinion is it comes down to the research you're willing to do. If you do your homework and you actually have a feel in a certain way, go for it. But if you're just going to go into it randomly, there's definitely better ways you can get value. I think I see a lot. I forgot. I think it was Matt. There's somebody that always says in our comments about betting a team at a certain spread and then taking them at bigger spreads if you're confident them for less money. I think if you're looking for value, that's the safer way to go. But if you feel strong about a teaser like how I did in the Jags-Chiefs game, it's absolutely something you should do.
Absolutely. And he actually brings up another point I want to talk about here, being from Chicago. And I know you probably have a strong opinion on this as well. Look, I get it. I get the from outside, but I don't get it. The Fields hate is just, it's mind-boggling to me, realistically. Again, he might, first, second year in the league, he's not going to be, God, I want to swear so bad. He's not going to be fucking Aaron Rodgers, man. It's just insane. He had, this, especially the RB1 talk. That's what really gets me going, is the people that say he can only run just is absolutely mind-boggling to me. I keep doing this, but it's I don't even know other way to put it. It's just he throws the ball perfectly fine. There's error throws. Obviously, you're going to have that from a quarterback who's literally running across the U.S. to get away from people, considering they can just walk through the line like freaking Johnny Cash. I don't understand. It's insane to me.
No, I'd love to touch on this more. I think whenever I see people say something, it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. I mean, look, I get it from A-Rod's perspective because he knows the Jets quarterback situation is abysmal. It's like what the Bears has been for years, and he would love the chance at Fields. But the reality is this. Number one, I don't see it in any quarterback in this draft class. Look, C.J. Stroud earned a lot of my respect. I've been a big hater of him, even though I go to Ohio State. But everything I've been begging for him to do, he did. I like him more than Bryce Young. Bryce Young doesn't do it for me. He's small. He's fragile. He played decent at Alabama, but he doesn't do anything for me that would make me ever give up Fields. And the reality is, for anybody who says that Fields is a running back or whatever, for me, I just interpreted that as people who are just casuals. The reality is, look at any Ohio State game. Look at any of his highlights. He is one of the best passers that I've ever personally watched in terms of my prime years of legitimately following football. The reality is, when people say, why did he throw at Ohio State not here? It's very simple. At Ohio State, he had a great offensive line and great receivers, so he could throw the football. On the Bears, he's running for his life the second that ball is snapped. And even by the chance that he makes a throw, that Walmart employee is not catching the football. I'm sorry, he's not. That guy's bagging groceries. He's not doing this. So, the guy who's bagging groceries and working a 9 to 5 that's happened to have Sunday off, so he's going to go play for the Bears. No, that guy's not going to be reliable to catch the football when you're throwing to the Chris Olaves and Garrett Wilsons and Jameson Williams of the world, transitioning to a guy who, like I said, was probably a Division III guy who enjoys playing flag football with his buddies. And that's
hey, don't hate that, man. That's where I love playing flag football in college.
I mean, I love Darnell Mooney, but I mean, Chase Claypool has not proven anything yet. Pringle isn't doing much for us.
Dude, I mean, it's
N'Keal Harry.
What are they gonna do? I don't know, man. It's like I said. Hopefully, my hope is DE's wide receivers, and O linemen. That's
Oh, I
realistically,
really,
as
I
long as I
really
see
would
that.
love the Bears to get Jackson Smith and Jigba. I don't know
Yep.
why he's falling because of the injury concerns, but what I'm hoping the Bears do is they trade down, get down to like where the Colts are at 5, get Michael Pittman Jr. in the trade. That would be a dream because I think him
Yeah.
and Fields would be a perfect connection. And then get like some
Something like
future
that.
picks,
Yeah.
address the defense, and maybe get like a late first or another early second and take Jackson Smith if he slides enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously there's a lot of different ways you can go. You can see all these people with the Bears doing the mock drafts and all this crap for what they can get for, or mock trades for what they can get for the
Right.
number 1 pick. There's definitely a lot of good stuff you can get. Like I've seen, I don't know if you, I mean, granted, the thing is that the Bears need. This is the last thing I'll touch on. That we can go to some comments and
Yeah.
go to but the Bears need a number 1. They need a flat out receiver. It's not Darnell Mooney's good, and Chase Claypool's a good player, but they're not going to be that number 1 guy that you need for that
Agreed.
offense that can
Absolutely.
go to. Like, I mean, Allen Robinson was that for years.
Yeah.
That the Bears had, but he was that number 1 guy that you could go to in that slot, like whether you played the slot or the out, it
Right.
didn't matter.
Right.
So they need that number 1 guy. That's
Yeah, no,
just
we
the way
got
I
2
view
really
it.
good wide receiver twos. We have 2 really good wide receiver twos, but you're right. We need that dominant guy who's willing to take over.
I agree with that 100%. Is that defensive edge rusher that the
Yeah, the
Bears
guy from Bama.
loved? I mean,
him.
they had Khalil Mack, they had Robert Quinn. It really propels the defense. Granted, they need way more help than that, but I'm just saying, like a guy like that, I definitely agree with A-Roth. I'm completely, and especially with this one as well, overrated. A lot of NFL teams like him. I mean, he's Alabama quarterback. People are gonna
Exactly,
love
that's
him.
why.
I mean, everyone from Nick Saban's program looks really good until
Right.
I mean, granted, again, a lot of these college guys, they look really good in college, but a lot of them just don't turn out, and this is the way it is. That's the
Mac
luck of the
Jones.
draft. Mac Jones. I mean, Mac Jones showed up a little bit for 1 year, but Trevor Lawrence is coming into his own finally. But then I hate to bring up, but I love to bring up all the Ohio State quarterbacks that have failed in the league. But
I
that's
feel like
just
so many of
me.
those were predictable, though.
I
Like, for
know
me,
they were.
Dwayne Haskins, I mean, rest in peace, but he had his red flags. Like, I don't know, there just really haven't been guys that you could hype up. I feel like Fields is the first one where, like, all Ohio State fans were truly, like, all
Yeah.
in saying he had to be the one, and I really do think so far he's shown it. I think actually a lot of Ohio State fans, at least when I talk to my friends, we didn't really believe in Stroud to be all that. Like, I thought he should be, like, a mid-first, late-first, until he did what we all
Yeah.
thought he was capable of against Georgia. I mean, that's a pro team he played. That
Yes.
defense is. I truly agree with the thing where people say like that college could go beat that NFL team is the most delusional thing I've ever seen. However, I will say that Georgia defense could legitimately compete with some NFL defenses. They would
Yeah.
still not be there, but they have enough guys on that team that are going to be first, second, third round picks where you're going to be like, wow, those guys are going to be great. And he was fearless against them. And I mean, he lost Marvin Harrison for that game, man. They didn't have Jackson Smith or Travion Henderson, and they still played unbelievable. Penn State Scott's coming after us.
Yeah, I know. Which again, it's very possible. But I want to see him as long as our GM, Mr. the Lord himself, Ryan Poles,
I like
as long
him.
as
I love him.
I do too, but as long as he plays his cards right, and then if they play like crap, then I'll be fine. But
Right.
again, I
we
want
have
to see
money,
it.
we have picks. And this
Yep.
year was supposed to be a disaster. Like
Correct.
this was the first time in my life, other than when we played the Packers, where I actively was rooting for the Bears to lose.
Yep.
Because you just have to understand the situation.
Yeah, I agree with you. But all right, guys, so let's go on. Let's finally get to what we're actually here to talk about. Let's go to NFL championship round. So this is what everyone looks to before the Super Bowl. It's what's going to give you the biggest inclination when they're playing these top level offenses, these top level defenses. This is what you look to into your teasers and everything else for the Super Bowl, which not only is the most watched event of the year in the US, it's probably the most bet on as well. I'll give it. I love betting all the stupid bets, like the coin tosses, the Gatorade color. But we'll get to that later. You have to bet on that. If you don't do it, you're not American. But anyway, we're starting with the NFC Championship because I think it's not. I mean, it's unfair to say it's the lesser look to of the two, but it's still a good game. But it is.
Yeah.
So again, this is San Francisco at Philadelphia. Philadelphia is -2.5, basically favored by a field goal. Morning line for San Francisco is +126. Cincinnati, gosh dang it. Philadelphia is -148, and the over-under is 46.5. Charlie, I'm going to let you talk first on this one. Where are you looking to this game, and what's your best bet looking to this game?
Right. So honestly, for this game, I think both these games are honestly very, very tough. One game I feel a lot stronger about than the other, and it's not this one. I will say though, I am leaning Philly. For me, honestly, it just comes down to quarterback play. I know Brock Purdy's been good, but the reality is, once he had to play against the Cowboys, like he didn't do anything spectacular. The majority of what he did well was just not be Dak Prescott. Like that's how they won that game. He just
Yeah,
understood if I give the ball to the team wearing the other colored uniforms, we're probably in trouble. So he was like, let's try to not do that. Dak
that's the Dak
Prescott,
special.
on the other hand, was like, I'm really good at throwing picks and I throw a lot of them. And my coach, Mike McCarthy, was a great coach in Green Bay that wasn't carried by Aaron Rodgers and didn't get kicked out of his kids' college or high school basketball camp, whatever. He encourages Dak to do that. So that's why they lost that game. The reality is Jalen Hurts is a significantly better quarterback. He's more proven. He's taken a big step forward. They're also at home. The 49ers, I know they're a run team, but you still have to go play in that cold weather. I don't care if you're a run team and that's better for the cold. There's still nothing like running when it's 70 something in San Fran and you're enjoying yourself versus it's in the low 20s and freezing in Philly with a bunch of crazy fans screaming at you the whole game and you can't hear anything. So I'm going to go with Philly in the points. I also would say I lean to the under. I just feel like these are two solid defenses, two teams that will want to run the football. So I would say I lean under. I won't tease this game. And also one other thing I do want to address, because I know we're supposed to keep up with the comments. I just thought that Ralph's comment was a bit interesting where he said that running QBs don't make it. And the only reason why I find it interesting is Lamar Jackson's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. We've seen what happens to the Ravens without him. Jalen Hurts is a mobile quarterback. Look at the steps forward he's taken. I believe Fields can too. Josh Allen likes to run. Mahomes, I guess, isn't a runner, but he likes to move. Even Herbert to move a little. Like the true pocket quarterbacks, like the Aaron Rodgers, the Tom Brady's, the Drew Brees, those don't exist anymore. That breed died off. So I personally don't agree with that take at all. I just think that the reality is, yes, they need to tone it down. Some quarterbacks are running, but again, like for Fields, it's not by choice. But yeah, sorry, sticking to this game because it does connect to Jalen Hurts. I do think that. And the only other thing I want to touch on with this game, because it's relevant, is I do wonder what San Francisco is going to end up deciding to do next offseason, depending on. And I think this game could have a huge impact on that.
Absolutely.
With what happens with Trey Lance, because he could be a guy that the Jets trade for. He's a guy that could be very interesting to see what happens. And I think these playoffs are going to be crucial as to what they do with their future.
I mean, not even that. I mean, like, I think last week we talked about it when I said, I think Trey Lance will probably be the starter for San Francisco next year. Obviously, depending on what Brock Purdy does, I think, like you said, this game has a really high inclination
for sure.
on what happens. I think either way, I mean, even Brock Purdy has absolutely brought up his level of,
for sure.
I mean, his stock in the league for sure. And I mean, A-Roth brings up a good point. The O-line stunk last week. I mean, Brock Purdy, I don't think he really even played that bad of a game, realistically.
No.
But yes, I completely agree with you. And obviously, conservative can mean a lot of things, but I really agree with A-Rod that I don't really think it was necessarily Purdy's fault that game was, got out of hand pretty quickly, and Dak Prescott had to do Dak Prescott things to lose the game.
Right.
But it just is the way it is. And like I said, either one of them could get traded next year. I mean, they definitely have a big decision to make. But
where do you lean on this game?
I know this is the game where this is the game that I am having trouble with right now, because part of me wants to take Philly on the spread. Parts of me wants to take San Francisco teaser to plus 3.5. The Eagles looked really good last week. Don't get me wrong, but the Giants team that they played last week is going to be, in my opinion, is nowhere close to where the San Francisco team is.
Oh, agreed. Absolutely.
Absolutely nowhere close. So it's going to be to the point where can Philadelphia get that start against a team that has the number 2 defense in the NFC? Number 1, number 2 defense in the NFC. These guys can be interchanged. I'm leaning towards San Francisco. I really am. But with all the weapons they have, with the defense they have, with Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, it leaves so much open to do. There's a lot of flat routes you can throw to him. There's a lot of, obviously running plays. Then you have Debo, you have, Brandon Ayuk, you have all these, George Kittle, just to name. Obviously, I basically named the whole offense at that point. But just all those weapons, and with the good defense, it just shapes up to me like this could actually be. And I mean, Kyle Shanahan, we all know what he does with San Francisco and how good he is as a coach. I think this is San Francisco's time. I'm sorry, Ralph. Ralph's actually going San Francisco. I'm sorry, Penn State Scott. I'm going to go San Francisco, but I'm going to teaser them with a pick that also you hate as well, Penn State Scott. I'm going to teaser it with a pick in the next game as a dual parlay here, but that's just my inclination. I just think they have a lot of weapons. It's going to be a really good game for sure. I'm going to see. Yep, I knew it was coming. Kyle, put down the pipe. Hey, I'm not piping. I'm drinking today, but I appreciate it, Penn State Scott. I agree with you. Look, it's going to be a good game no matter what. And no matter which way you put it, I'm just going to enjoy watching the games this weekend. Like it's the top two teams arguably in the both conferences. There's no Cinderella stories this year. It's just going to be good old-fashioned, really good football. So I'm extremely excited for this weekend. And just to go again, Ralph Conti also brings up a good point. It's going to be 50 in Philly on Sunday, which, I mean, to Charlie's point, I know Charlie was, I mean, your point's still taken, Charlie, by no
Right. Yeah,
means.
it's still not in the
But
70s. Yeah.
it's still not in the 70s. But again, 50 is nowhere close to, Buffalo's -5 or whatever. So
Oh, for sure.
I think it's going to be a good game. I'm going to take San Francisco. Charlie's leaning Philadelphia. So whoever you want to go with, make your pick. But again, it's just going to be, like I said, a very, very good old-fashioned football game on Sunday. Now we're going to the next game here. This game is, I think, what more people are looking to. Again, not to disrespect the last game the last game we talked about,
sure.
but the way Cincinnati played against Buffalo and the way Kansas City, just the stigma is around Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes, everyone always flocks to this game. I wasn't surprised because Cincinnati is favored by 1. It's dead even on the money line as of before the flagship show for the podcast. I looked at 6:00. It's dead even on the money line. Over under is 47.5. I see a lot of people, and again, they deserve it, playing Cincy in this leg. And I am going to go Cincinnati, but I'm going to take the money line. I think this can definitely come down to a 1-score game, let alone a 1-point game. Last second field goal, as long as Evan McPherson doesn't have a McPherson Crosby type show. I'll never forget that. Just again, tangent
That
real quick.
Nuts.
Where they missed like 4 field goals total, 1 by 1.
Yep.
I had my last leg of my parlay in there. I had like a 21 parlay. The last leg was the Green Bay to win by 2.5, and he kept missing, and then they kept coming up and they kept missing. Absolute roller coaster. I can't believe I even rooted for the Packers in that scenario, but that unbelievable. But again, back to my point, I could see this coming down to a last second field goal. I'm leaning Cincinnati. Charlie, where are you leaning?
So yeah, this is where the best bet and my pick this is. So yeah, my best bet is going to be, I know it's only 2 games to pick from, but it is going to be Cincinnati money line. However, the pick I'm going to give out is not going to be that, so that they're different. This is the game where I like the teaser. And for me, I'm going to go with, I am going to encourage a bigger teaser to be safe. Personally, I would do a 5-point teaser just to be safe because you still will get value. I would take Cincinnati spread and the under. And I'm going to explain why. I have a stat on this one that I'm very intrigued by. This game's over-under opened at 52.5, and it is 47.5. 75% of bets are placed on the over, and it has moved 5 points. That is absurd. Now, another thing people have to factor in, I do want to tie this back to the Jags-Chiefs game for a second. I want to make sure that people understand there is no hate towards the Chiefs for when I was gassing up the Jaguars coming through for me. I understand that Patrick Mahomes got hurt. He suffered the ankle injury. That obviously impacts the game. He's not going to be at 100% in that game. It's in Kansas City. It's going to be cold. I think it'll be like a game in like the low 20s. So I think with the teaser, the under will be safe. Could definitely see this being a game where it's like 21 apiece or 20 apiece and a late field goal ends it for the Bengals winning. That's how I see this game turning out. Again, with Mahomes banged up, I think Kansas City is going to have to be more conservative. Their defense is going to, I think, play better, though, and more fired up, knowing that they have to do that. It's what they did against the Jags, who still have a decent offense, by the way. I know they're not the Bengals, but it's not like they're playing the Jags when they had Blake Bortles way back when, where that defense was elite and that offense couldn't do anything.
Yep.
So, but that's where I would lean. I like, for my best bet, it's going to be the Bengals money line. And then for my pick I'm giving out for this game that's separate from it, it's going to be a 5-point teaser of Cincy to cover and the under. That's where I'm leaning.
See, and I know this is why these two games, like these competitive games, get really, for me personally, I don't usually like betting over under. I used to be a very big like player prop guy, and I still am. In a way, I still am a big player prop guy, but I've getting in more into it. This game, it really, for obviously Charlie likes the under. It could go either way. I really think this game can just turn into an absolute shootout. I mean, the Chiefs secondary is nowhere near what it used to be. I mean, the Bengals have a good defense, but as we all know, the Chiefs have the weapons to be able to torch a defense no matter who's there. I really could see this game turning into a shootout. This game could easily be, 34-27 or something along those lines. That's definitely not or outside the realm of possibility for me. But like I said, it is tough. These games this week, not only the horse racing is tough this week, the NFL games definitely are tough because they're so evenly matched. Yeah, I'm leaning Cincinnati money line and the over. That's where I'm leaning on this game. But again, do your research, do your stats, work up where your angles are, and it can easily sway either way. But that's where
Absolutely.
I'm leaning, and obviously, like I said, I'm going to bring up last thing before we go over to the horse racing, and we'll take any more comments. If you have any opinion on either this game or San Francisco's game, please leave it in the live chat. We would love to get to it, and we can easily talk about it. We definitely have time. I'm going to share up on my screen right now. As we all know, the Chiefs and the Bengals played each other in week 13. The Bengals came out on top with a great comeback in the fourth quarter. Obviously, scoring right here, it says 10. They scored 10 points to win by 3 in the final. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes, throwing for 22, but Joe Burrow throwing for only incompleting 6 passes for 286 and 2 touchdowns. Samji Pirine, which is actually, I love seeing him do well, honestly. I mean, Jamar Chase and everyone follow behind. Obviously, people are going to look to this game as well. But again, this is a game where it came down when both these teams were pretty much at full strength. Again, Bengals minus Joe Mixon and other, injuries like that. But it required the Bengals to have a pretty stellar comeback in the fourth quarter to be able to win this game by 3. And again, it's these games like this come down to these late field goals. Like I said, I'm leaning Bengals. Charlie's leaning Bengals money line as well. You can easily tease up. The way you get value in these games like this is teasing up spreads, but in opposite the way of the spread. So let's say, like, for example, if you think the Bengals are gonna, not demolish the Chiefs, but they're gonna win by at least 10 touchdown, you bring it up to 6.5. That brings up the odds to almost 2-1. On a single bet, and that's where you get, that's where you can really get value from these games in these close matchups. You can find, those not blowouts per se, but you can get up to those things. And that's where you can really get your value for you horse racing players out there. But I think this is a game that can come down to the wire. That's the
wrong thing. Sure. For sure.
But, it could definitely go either way. Like I said, Charlie, final thoughts before we go on to horse racing.
Oh, yeah, no, I was going to say, I'm very excited to recap last week's horse racing because I have some strong things I want to talk about in that I'm frustrated about. But no, absolutely. And the only other thing I was going to say, I did want, if you have a chance to highlight Matt, I think he made a good, an interesting comment. And I know Matt always has some good thoughts in the chat. So what I was going to actually talk about is exactly what you were building on. Is if you are looking for something to bet and you don't want to go the teaser route, I think it is Matt Miller who talks about this a lot. If you feel strongly in the Philly game or in the Bengals game that one of those teams, like you're not really sure about the spread or over under, but you know what, maybe something in your heart feels, because they're very low spread. So it doesn't have to be a blowout.
Yeah.
But maybe you really do feel like this game is going to be a touchdown game in favor of this team. And that's where I see it. So what you could honestly end up choosing to do is like take them spread. And if you're looking for that extra value and you don't want to risk a teaser, which I completely understand because they are hard to figure out, especially with over unders, then sprinkle a little bit less than what you did on like 2.5 or -1 on like -3 or -5.5 or -6, something like that. Take a chance on one of those if you don't feel the same way about taking a chance on the points, which I completely understand if you don't, by the way.
Right. And again, bringing up Matt's comment from last week, I'm going to take his comment off the screen. But to bring up his point last week, it was a game similar to this where it was a close spread. If you place a lot of money, let's say your Bengals are your top pick here, but you think obviously like I do, whether they can win by a touchdown or they can win by a field goal to win by 1.
Right.
You put the most amount of money you bet, you put it on Bengals money line. Then you put a little bit less, kind of put that middle tank in like, minus 2.5 by a field goal, where that gets you to probably plus, I would say like probably plus 120, plus 130, somewhere in that range. And then you place the least amount of money on them to win by like a touchdown or a 10 points or something along those lines.
Right.
Where you get that value. So if they do win, you cash on all of those. But if they only win by 1 point, you still cash your biggest bet.
Exactly.
So you're not losing necessarily on the bet. You're still cashing a little bit. versus the rest of your bets. But it's just a way to kind of cover. If you really feel good about the Bengals, that's the route to go, in my opinion. That's a really good. Um,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah, Penn
I
State
just read
Scott's got
Penn
a
State.
rough
Oh yeah,
comment. It's a rough
absolutely.
comment.
There we go. But yeah, second game feels like gambling. Absolutely. Truth exposed. Thanks so much for joining the show. Greatly appreciate it. That's a teaser for you. Bengals +9. You're gonna
That's
get.
a
I mean,
huge teaser. Oh
that's
my
an
God.
absolutely huge teaser. But you gotta. I would, for me personally, I would have to pair that up with something to get myself a little bit of value. Whether you pair it with something in the game,
Oh, I'd have to pair
like
it with
FanDuel
with a
Sportsbook,
lot of
but
stuff.
you
Yeah.
feel, yeah, right. But that's just me. For obviously us personally, where we're not betting an insane amount of money. I mean, for someone, is placing like $5,000 or so on that bet to
Right.
win, 1,500 or whatever, it might be a good bet. But
I don't know. I
for
don't like
us,
those kind of things though, because
well,
it
no, right.
makes me think of the Chargers game when someone who's really rich live
Well,
bet
oh my
$1
God.
million or something
Talking
on the
about that
Chargers,
game.
win a few grand, and then they end up blowing it. So yeah,
Oh
I
my
don't know.
God.
I never like taking those
Yeah.
big risks.
Those videos were hilarious.
It kind of reminds me of like when someone like really rich puts like a couple hundred, like I don't know, 10,000 on a heavy favorite horse to show to try to
Oh,
make a little, and then something might go wrong. I don't know. I don't like taking those kind of bets. Not
no,
worth it to me.
right. Which
I
that
mean, I also
charge,
don't have that kind of money laying around. I don't have
well,
$1 million to live, but like,
frankly,
I think
neither do I, but you know that, and I'm sure everyone else knows that as well. That's actually there's a lot of videos like that. Obviously that one guy, but there's a guy, I'm not sure if you saw it. There's a guy who fell asleep at halftime, a Chargers fan that fell asleep
yeah, I
at
saw that.
halftime
Yeah,
and
he
then
woke
woke up
up.
and he's like, "Hey bro, they lost, bro." He's just sitting there like his hand on his head. That was a good video, but truth exposed, he says he's not betting that, but that's what he thinks they're
Oh, he
gonna
thinks
win
they'll
by.
win by that
So,
much.
but
Gotcha.
again, that's the thing is, well, you do that tiered betting, like I said, to where if they win that, you bet by 7.5, you bet them to win a touchdown, over a touchdown or something. You can cash on all those, and that's the way I like to bet. Kind of, not covering your ass, but that type of thing where. But yes, I completely agree. Truth exposed. My fault that I read it as +9. Again, that's probably just the gambler in me. But
Yeah, me too. No,
again,
it's all
it's the
good.
way it is. But Jim Pilar's also brings up things since he's getting too much love for being a bad and overrated Buffalo team. Man, Jim, you kind of you swapped a lot in the last
Yeah,
week, man. What happened? You I mean, obviously I know you're a Buffalo fan. For everyone that
yeah.
doesn't know, Jim
There's
Pilar is a
been
big
natural
Buffalo
hate
fan.
against their own team.
But yeah, he's beating a bad and overrated Buffalo team. I think that's a little harsh. I just don't think they played very well. Again, but this is a game. This is that game this week out of the two. I think
Right.
that people can. I mean, both games are really good. Both
Oh,
games
for
are really
sure.
close.
I mean, the
Both
big
games are
problem
within
is
a
also
field goal spread.
Mahomes. That's a big
Yep.
problem. Is also Mahomes is injured. We don't know. I mean, he's going to play, but we don't know how healthy he's going to be. That's why I just personally think. I know Matt mentioned earlier. It's a very tough game to bet. It is much more of a game
Yep.
that's like it's so exciting. Why not just watch it? I just feel like I can't possibly put money on a team when their star quarterback who carries them is hurt, because if
Yep.
he ends up being a shell of himself, then the Bengals dominate them. There's much more ways I feel like where you can see this game go the Bengals' way than the
Yep.
Chiefs. So that's why I just feel like it's either bet the Chiefs or bet the Bengals or stay away.
Yeah, I agree with you. And like you said, I mean, you said this when you were originally analyzing the game, where if the Chiefs have to be more conservative, that might not be what the best way they play. Obviously, they do the best when Mahomes is able to, have that free range and be able to make the plays that he's so well known for. I know he was walking without a limp today at the press conference, Eric. That's a good point. I just think it can easily be healed, and I could be reading way too into it. But I want to see his practice report and how the people view that when he's running around. But that's just my opinion. He could just be completely healed, and I could be reading too far into it. But Eric, thanks for that comment. It brings up a good point. And Ralph, before we right before we go back into the horses,
Right.
Who's going to win the Super Bowl in your opinion? My future was on the Bills. I will fully disclose that was made week 17. I got it about 6-1 or something like that. So I thought that was good value. I think if the Bengals play like everyone thinks they will against the Chiefs, I think they have the best chance to be able to win the Super Bowl this year.
Agreed.
I'm going to go
they're
with
also my
them.
pick. I'm gonna go with the Bengals as well.
Wow, we're really not reading too far in between the lines here. But again, like I said, San Francisco, I really, really don't think they're completely out of it. I really
I
don't.
don't. I don't believe in the NFC. I mean, I know I'm biased
Yeah, I
because of
agree.
teams I support there, but like the thing I always said is like I think my Saints could beat any team in the NFC, and I think we're a terrible team. I think the
Yeah.
NFC is just a joke. I mean, you look at the Saints; they play at San Francisco and play them nose to nose the whole game. They just couldn't finish in the red zone. That's a terrible Saints team. They beat up on the Eagles on the road. I know they had Gardner Minshew, but that still shouldn't happen. and that's your two teams representing the NFC. I always said that the AFC is a gauntlet, but whoever survives that gauntlet and isn't limping the most is the team that's going to win the Super Bowl. The Bills had some injuries to deal with coming into the playoffs, but we thought that they were built well enough to deal with it.
Yep.
They weren't. The Chiefs had no injuries, but seemed like they were going to have to depend too much on Mahomes, which had its red flags, and now he's playing hurt. Regardless of if he's limping or not, he is still hurt to some extent. And then you have the Bengals, who on paper look probably the most balanced team heading into those playoffs because of the lack of injuries, but had obviously their questions and concerns, and they're answering all those questions. So I feel like that's why the Bengals make the most sense to win it all at this point. But yeah, let's get into the horse racing.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some very good comments, but I will not bring those up on the screen. But Chris Mack and Eric Anderson, I will not say allegedly, I will not say you're wrong. But that's, again, it's wide open. These games are so good this week. So again, if you're not comfortable with betting them, don't just watch them. It's an absolutely great weekend to watch.
Absolutely.
And let alone, before the Super Bowl, where you can just absolutely hammer all your bets for that weekend. But Charlie, without further ado, let's go into the horse racing, guys. For all of you that weren't here at the beginning of the show, thank you so much for joining in. I greatly appreciate it. We're going to go over we're going to piggyback Pegasus weekend, and we're going to go with the late pick 4 on Friday at Gulfstream Park. Really big fields, really competitive fields as well. Charlie and I were talking about it before. At least for the first 3 weeks, we've looked at this as easily the toughest card that we've come across. It's going to be for me, for all the people that don't know, I love finding singling horses and playing them up, as much as I possibly can, getting that value. This week is really hard to do that. So,
agreed.
But
absolutely.
We'll go into it right now, guys. Without further ado, we're going to race 7 at Gulfstream Park. It is a maiden special weight, 84,000. Let me go. Sorry. There we go. It is, like I said, maiden special weight, 84,000. And the morning line favorite is the number 2, Sure Can, for Edgar Perez and Brian Lynch. I'm going to bring up the picks right now. And we have the 2 in there. Patrick's picks are still on the screen. Like I said, he is working. He should be joining us if he can any minute now. This is about the time he said he would come on. Both Charlie and Patrick are going with the 5. I'm actually going with the 1, but I have the 5 in second. Charlie, as I bring up the PPs, we'll go to you here first. What is your talk about Tactical Joke, which I think I might know why you picked this horse on top for Irad and Wesley Ward?
Yeah, so I didn't have the stones to do it. I wanted to single this race when we get to my ticket later because I have a certain bias for why I went with the 5. But I can't do it. I always lose the first race here, which is something I want to hit on at some point. But why I went with the 5 is pretty straightforward for me. Love Irad Ortiz, but more specifically for those of you who don't know or do, I talked about this briefly on the very first episode. My uncle has worked for Wesley Ward. He still works with him. When I go to Florida, I get to go be in his box. I've been in the winner's circle with him from time to time. So he's a guy I'm very connected with. Great guy, really good friend of my uncle's. So you
have inside intel for us this week, is what you're saying.
Well, I haven't gotten to ask my uncle about the horse yet. I wanted to get his take, but I mean, it's been training well. He's got Irad. I will say, one thing that always makes it tough with me for Wesley is that he tends to train young, really fast horses for sprint races, and I like closers, but he tends to train speed horses. So it's always hard for me to bet his horses. However, for me, usually anytime it's under 7 furlongs is when I like to take his horses. I think this is the perfect spot. I mean, it was a $560,000 horse, so it was not cheap. It's got Irad on it. It's a 5 furlong on the turf. First time starter. This is where Wesley Ward thrives. Again, it's such a big field, and there are so many talented horses. I didn't have it in me to single it, but I do really feel like the 5 is going to be almost impossible to beat. I feel like this is a great race for the 5.
Yeah, and let me put myself on screen here just for one moment. For those of you that don't know, obviously, we like to cater to sports bettors. So those sports bettors that don't know horses too well, Wesley Ward, first time out, generally loves to have his horses cranked up and ready to go for these spots, especially a horse that sold for $560,000 and is they have so much confidence. That's the word. I can't freaking think, but
right.
They have so much confidence in this horse from the sale. I think this horse could definitely be live this weekend. Granted, his works aren't the best coming into this, but they're definitely not slow. No. And A-Roth, for all you people out there, like I said, thanks for joining the show, A-Roth. But again, first, it really is something new. Like I said, a lot of these people, like Charlie's not too much. He's obviously into horses, don't get me wrong, but he's definitely more sports side. Yeah. CHC, yeah, it's definitely one of the first for sure that I've seen Um, why am I blank? I cannot remember for the life of me who CHC usually has horses with, but that is a good point, Ara. Thanks so much for the comment. I'm gonna go back to the one here. So this is Accomplished Girl. Accomplished Girl is trained by Safi Joseph and ridden by Edgar Zayas. Edgar Zayas is Safi Joseph's number one go-to guy. This horse has a start under its belt at GULFSTREAM about 3 weeks ago. As you can see here, right with the January 8th nomination, this horse is pulling a bullet work. That's Pletcher. Thank you, Aroth. I appreciate it. I knew it used to be Baffert. I did know that. I actually didn't know they switched to Pletcher, but that actually is really good because obviously the red and yellow halves. Put in a bullet work since his last race. Really didn't run a bad race. Sure can beat him, but this horse in this running line, and especially at a 2-1, maybe even lower than that, probably not judging by the Ward horse, which is definitely going to take money. I just can't. I can't put that horse on top. I love the second time off of the second time start is where horses can show great improvement, especially with that bullet work for Safi Joseph, who does really well at GULFSTREAM Park. I'm going to go with number one, Accomplished Girl. But again, this race, it's going to set a precedent for the later races. And that this race, I mean, you can go so many which ways in this race. I mean, other than some horses such as like the 4, no disrespect to the connections. But again, that horse just ran a really, actually, he took some money in that last race, which I thought was extremely interesting and didn't run an absolute lick in that last race. Me and you have the 2, like I said. And third, we'll go to your 12 after that. Charlie, you have the 2 and 3. Do you want to add anything to what I said?
For sure. I mean, it was tough for me because you know me, I'm a big Safi Joseph Jr. guy. It's something I do want to hit on at some point if we talk about last week's card at all, because I had a certain pick with him where he had a horse that was 8-1 that was my long shot and got bet down all the way to the favorite by the time the race started. But yeah, no. So I mean, I know we've also talked about. I know he had Tyler on that race, but he does. I've made a few picks before where I've liked the Safi Joseph Jr. Edgar Zayas connection. I actually almost had the one in my top 3. I put it in parentheses on my own sheet. I was between him and the 2 for third. But no, I do like the 2 a lot. I watched the replay. Actually, I don't have like the special stuff where I can watch replay, so I literally just went on YouTube and looked it up because, especially when it's fields where they haven't run much or they haven't run at all, I usually like to watch the races because you don't have as much to work with. And yeah, I liked what I saw from Shurkan. It didn't get the best trip. It got checked, as it mentioned in the comments. But yeah, I mean, I like Edgar Perez on it. I think he'll do a good job riding the horse. After it got checked, though, when it got into that straight, the horse really picked it up and turned on a new gear. So I definitely think out of the returning horses that have run before, that he's very dangerous and could make some noise. Would not be surprised at all if he wins. I will say, though, when I saw the odds, very surprised in a field this big that he's 2-1. I actually think his odds will end up finishing higher than 2-1. I think Wesley will probably close the favorite, in my opinion. But yeah, that's the only one of the only red flags. I would not want to bet this horse on its own because, as good as it looked, I don't see it in this competitive of a field being a 2-1 horse. I'm not. Wait. Yeah, Kyle, I think you might be muted. I was gonna say, unless I'm lagging, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, my fault. I apologize. Sorry about that, guys. I was just talking about to the where, a horse like the number 2. Again, I greatly apologize. Sorry, guys, but with a horse like the 2, even though this horse ran a 68 his last time out, a horse like that just came out first time, didn't get as good of a placing, but it will be higher odds than the 2. I'm sure of it. With in second time out, can show that great improvement. I'd much rather have a horse like the 1 than the 2 in this spot, and that's just the way I personally handicap. But thank you guys in the comments. I greatly appreciate it. I greatly apologize for the technical issues. Charlie, all I said was, and then I'm going to let you close it out with the 12 and any last comments you have for Luis Saez and Carlos Perez all the way on the outside, which tends to be a very, very hard place to come from on these very short turf sprints.
Oh, absolutely. I think it can be challenging, but I just love everything about this horse. Obviously, it wasn't a cheap horse. Actually, I believe it's sire when I looked. I think it's the same sire that the Wesley Ward horse comes from, Practical Joke, which I just thought was kind of interesting. But yeah, love that Luis Saez on it. Love the works as well with the 35 and 3 straight 48s. This horse has really been working forwardly. I also think that it's a very decent price at 8-1, and I just want to take a chance. I mean, like honestly, I truly feel like this is a pretty wide open field. These races are hard to figure out, and I wanted to find a price. Again, even though the two look good, I don't think he's a 2-1 horse. I don't think he performed well enough for that. He's had more experience, so I feel like by this point they would kind of expect more out of him. I thought the one is the better value, but again, even though it was its first start, didn't do anything to get me too crazy. I like the Wesley horse, but I don't know. Especially these kind of races, I tend to like to try to find true first time starters if I can. And yeah, again, getting the Luis Saez booking is obviously a great sign because he's usually one of the guys who is one of the first picks on what horse he's going to be on. So he must see something with those works as well. So yeah, I think it's a value pick. And it's certainly a price that I think could end up winning this race and could help my ticket.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, the only thing for me why I just didn't like this horse first time starter all the way on the outside, is when if they're going to be 5 wide on the turn, especially first time out, it's going to be really hard for that horse to have any sort of kick down the lane. But hey, if he can get over, especially with Saez, he's the guy that knows it. Any guy will be able to get over, it will be Saez. So I can see it happening, but again, the outside's going to be the challenge. Let's move on to race 8, guys. It's going to be allowance optional claimers for $25,000 claiming price. It is, oh my God, what is happening? Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. It is race 8, an allowance optional claiming $25,000, $86,000 purse with the morning line favorite, a pretty lukewarm 3-1 on Peachy Weechy from Irad Ortiz and Mike Maker. I distinctly remember that horse as I've been to Gulfstream before. It's raced both times when I was there. So that's just something for you. As I bring up the picks right now, I'm going with the number 7, Rosebug, and Charlie is going with the number 2, Perfect Grace for Saez and Pletcher. Charlie, I'll let you start again on this as I bring up the PPs. What do you like about the number 2?
Yeah, so this race is brutal. It's only 8 horses, and yet when we get to my ticket, I have the most horses in the field on this one. I really think this is a 4-horse race between the 2, 3, 4, and 8. I see you and Patrick are very high on the 8, so I'm a little concerned that I didn't end up keeping it on the ticket. But yeah, no, honestly, what excites me about the 2 for starters is looking at the competition. I mean, personally, like when you're looking at the competition it went against is not even close to anybody else in this field. I like Luis Saez again. That's obviously why I liked him earlier in the race before. One of my favorite jockeys. Always love when he gets the assignment with Todd Pletcher. I also do like, because I believe this is an optional claim, and I like the fact that it isn't up for the claim. Obviously means they believe in the horse. Came from a solid sire as well and tap it. Yeah, and the other thing I kind of like is, again, I actually tried to do my homework as quickly as I could on these and watch some old replays. So I know it has been on a very long layoff, but I think Pletcher knows what he's doing and bringing him back at the right time. And when I watched that race, honestly, what I noticed is, again, like as I mentioned in the comments, it had a tough break at the beginning. It got bumped, but it had really good turn of foot. It had really good speed. It looked strong. It just looked like it was at the wrong distance. It looked like a mile was just too long of a distance, and that if it was just a little bit shorter of a race, that it would have won convincingly. But that after it looked like it initially was going to pull away, which you can see because it was up by a head and got it up to a length and a half, was after it had started to get that kick to pull away, right when it got to the very end, it just gassed out. So I think this distance really helps as well. So yeah, I love this race. And I see someone mention the 4, and yeah, I agree. I think the 4 is a very intriguing horse as well.
There's a lot of intriguing horses in this race for me.
For an 8-horse field, this is tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this again, we set the precedent. This chart is just extremely tough. And the only thing, again, you mentioned it, but the thing is for me is that this 2021 number is absolutely. I mean, it's a massive, massive layoff for a horse that was running. I mean, obviously in a very much tougher spot at Belmont, Saratoga, and Aqueduct. But again, Todd Pletcher, I want to bring up some stats real quick just for you and the viewers out there. Off of 180 plus day layoff. So if the horse's last race was over 106 months, over 6 months ago, he's 26% on the win end in horses coming off a 6-month layoff, and off of a year layoff, a lot smaller sample size, but over a year layoff, he's still 5 for 22. That's 23% on the win end, which is honestly insane for that high of a layoff. But again, I just think the horse he might need the race, and I don't think the buyers stack up for me personally for a horse that comes off of that far of a layoff. Look, okay, so this is where I'm either gonna, I'm either going to be completely right or completely wrong. And
This
I
is
know
very un-Kyle of you. You do not go chalk at
I
all.
did not go chalk. I know. Someone mentioned that last race. I'm a chalk eating weasel. I know that. Everyone knows that. I'm an absolute chalk eating weasel.
Yeah, I love
But
the
this is the card for me where, there's a lot of different ways I can go. And this is the horse I'm going to look to. It's Rosebug for Bill Mott and Jose, which is never a bad thing to look forward to. But look, this is what I'm going off of. This is for an optional claiming for 25,000. Granted, it's championship meet Pegasus weekend. It's still going to be really good. But this horse has been listed, for $100,000 listed stake races. Again, the thing that I'll talk about it in a little bit, but the listed stake races, he hasn't run very good at all. But again, Morning Matcha was really good in his next start or her next start. I did it. God damn it. Get a drink for that. If everyone that doesn't know, on the flagship show, if you call a he a she or a she a he, you got a drink. So cheers, everybody. But again, I just think with the drop in class for Bill Mott, granted, again, this horse is also coming off a big layoff. But again, look at these works. You got Payson Park at Payson Sun, which is, one of the biggest workouts places down in Florida, workout tracks. Why do I keep saying places like that? But anyway, 36 a bullet work, 48 a bullet work, 101 and 2/5 for 5 furlongs is not bad. 49, 102. I mean, look, these workouts are really good that signify that I think Bill Mott has this horse ready. He's by American Pharoah. So American Pharoah's, like I said, obviously he was a very, very good router.
Right.
His horses have been doing really well at sprinting, and this race is 7 furlongs. If you look at his 2 7 furlongs, granted, one was on the firm turf, but again, lost by a neck in his maiden and then broke his maiden at 7 furlongs. I think 7 furlongs hits this horse really well. And as long as he has a little bit of pace to run into, which I think he does in this race, this horse could be live at probably 5-1, 6-1. Again, this is the first time I'm seeing actually 9-2. Okay. I would need at least 4-1 to bet on this horse on the front end. I think that's where I get my value, at least 4-1, 9-2 at that morning line. If he goes below that, which he might with the connections with Bill Mott and Ortiz, I'll have to wait and see the board. But that's my value line for this. As long as he stays at or above his morning line, I will be taking a shot with this horse. And then, Charlie, we're going to go through it real quick here. You touched on a game, and then you have the number 3, who is the favorite, Peachy Weechy.
Yeah, so I have the 3 and third. Again, I feel like this is a really tough race. Like, there were 4 horses I legitimately think could win, and now that I've heard a little more about the 7, I mean, like, for an 8-horse field, this is one of the more competitive small fields I've seen. Where it could be a race where you would have to pick 4 or 5 horses, and you still might not get out, which is crazy to say. But the 3, obviously, you got Irad Ortiz on him. Michael Maker, a great trainer, looked really solid when I watched back that race in its last effort on December 26th. Was sitting like a little off the pace and then made the perfect move. Looked like this horse really likes this distance. Even though it is a horse that would typically sit off the pace, you would think the longer distance would work well for it too. Evidently, at a mile, it hasn't. But if you look at its past history, even at other tracks, 7 furlongs has really seemed to be this horse's sweet spot. I do like this horse. I don't think it should go off as the favorite. That was actually part of the reason I put it down as my third choice. Was I had a feeling with Irad and Michael Maker, this horse might be the favorite. And the competition also doesn't get me overly excited. I know it was in that grade 3 way back when, but that looks like they just tried to take a shot in the dark to see if it could make something happen. I mean, you see the price on it at $60.30. It had no chance in that race. So in every other race where it's been a competitive price, it's been low competition. But I know someone in the chat mentioned as well, the 4 very, very much so does intrigue me with Tyler Gaffleone.
Absolutely. I mean, this horse is really good. Granted, they're on synthetic numbers,
right?
But there's no telling. I mean, it's by Distorted Humor. I have a Bernardini mare. For those that don't know, I mean, Distorted Humor is a really good sire. Stands for 50 grand, but a Bernardini was a really, really nice dirt horse back in I think the late 90s. I believe, or no, the early 2000s. I think his Breeders' Cup Classic was 06, if I remember correctly. But again, there's no saying this horse can't take to the dirt. He's been working really well. And then the 8 is American, of course. Look, I threw this horse in there for the sole factor that if this horse runs out in front and just beats everyone to the speed, this horse can stay there. That is why I threw this horse on top. I know there's other speed in this race, but out of anyone, this horse just seems to rocket. If you watch the last race,
I saw
it just absolutely rocketed out of the gate. That's the only reason I threw this horse in there, but I completely understand everybody's in here. Jim Plars brings up a good point I want to bring up right before I move on. Payson Park, which is the place where Rosebud is working tends to be a deeper track, which makes the work stand out. So what that means is deeper track horses would tend to run slower times because they have to dig in to the track a little more to be able to get going. So when you see those really nice workouts at those times at a place like Payson, it really tends to turn your eye to it. So Jim, thank you for that comment. I greatly appreciate it. But as we're losing a little bit on time here, guys, let's move on to the 9th race. It is, as I turn on the PPs here, I bring up the picks. It's a claiming race. I know that. Yeah. Claiming 20,000 to 16,000. It is the morning line favorite is the number 7 Mosler's Image, I believe is what Pete Aiello said when I watched the replay. Mosler's Image, actually a Maryland bred for Irad Ortiz and Jane Sabelli at 9-5. And 9-5, I thought it might be that low, is a little short for me. As I bring onto the screen here, Charlie, we're both going with the 7. Why don't you talk about Mosler's Image?
Yeah, so I kind of feel the same way. When I was looking through this, from what I saw from the horse, from the competition level, and again, from getting the assignment with Irad, had a feeling that this horse would be the favorite. I didn't think it'd be quite this short. I thought it would be maybe closer to like a 2-1, 5-2, I think is where I really would have seen it, like 5-2-ish. But yeah, no, I really love its last effort. Obviously, that was Irad's first time with the horse. Had a very solid effort. Obviously, you see in the comments, it got bumped with silly would run on. Other thing that really stood out to me was the fact that at 5 furlongs on the turf, its last workout was 59 seconds. So obviously, not that December 29th was a long time ago, but like hasn't raced in a month, and its most recent workout after that is a bull at work. I think this horse looks great. I like the kind of trip that I think it'll get in this race. I know we are going shorter, but I do think that this horse has the speed. I do expect this horse to win, but not comfortably. Like I don't think it should win as comfortably as that line is. I don't know if I would bet it on its own if I was just betting this race because I don't know what the public will do. You'll have some people that are more knowledgeable that might realize it shouldn't be at this price, which would let it go up. Yeah. Then you'll have the other people who will just be like, oh, it had a decent last race, and I see IRADs on it, so let me just hammer this horse, and it'll get
bet way down more than it should.
And there's another horse that I want to touch on at some point. Yeah. This is my second choice, who I think is a very much so a value play, in my opinion. I love the 3. I love Kizzy. This horse in its last 2 races has looked great, even though it was 2 different surfaces, which I kind of like because I was a little worried originally. Obviously, if you look at a lot of its recent races, they were on the all-weather. They weren't on the turf, and this is a turf race. If you look at its last race where they switched to the surface, the horse responded very well. Also, a very respectable time to win the race in 141 flat. Again, decent speed figure as well. I know the works haven't been anything crazy, but when I saw the odds, I kind of thought this horse would end up being like, I don't know, like a 4 or 5-1 type of horse. That's what I saw. So when I saw it was 8-1, that immediately got me excited.
Yeah,
definitely would be a race where, like, maybe even though I do think the 7 ends up winning, rather than betting the 7 to win, maybe I just put a little on the 3 to win and do an exacta with the 7-3. If I trust the 7 enough, would get a lot more value on it. And I mean, look, if you look at this horse's win in second place, it was at a price 11.90 and 10.8. So it was at these kind of odds before and proved people wrong. So I definitely, I mean, obviously, you see, I know Patrick's not here right now, but he has the 3 on top, so he kind of sees what I saw in it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, just to kind of run through them here, the 7 for me is a horse where you can look at its figures and, like this highest figure, the 164, 69, 67, 69, 70, 66. But then, obviously there's an 80 here, but on the synthetic. This horse ran a 72 last time, granted claimed by a little bit lesser barn, I would assume. No disrespect to obviously Jane Sabelli, but Trombetta has a higher track record and obviously runs a lot more horses. It might be a hard claim off of that, but I think this horse might just get the really good trip in the middle. I'm going to talk about my Charlie's third choice and my second choice, and we'll move on real quick. Linny Kate for Orlando Noda, also owned by Orlando Noda, might I add, with Joel Rosario. This last race is what really turned me on to this horse. And because the thing is like, if you look back here, this horse had some really good races at Belmont on the turf. Saratoga, not so much. But again, look at these spots this horse is running in. Granted, again, if you looked at, this was for Orlando Noda. Orlando Noda had this horse back all the way in early 2022. Horse raced for 32,000 at Saratoga, ran like crap. Then it came back to 12.5, and guess who claimed him? Orlando Noda by himself. So that's always a sign for me that this trainer really thinks highly of this horse. Granted, these buyers back here aren't very good, but again, he comes back, he puts him back at 16, and he runs a really good race. So again, this is a race where you can really just kind of go anywhere realistically. These horses
Absolutely.
aren't very good. So, it
The
just
other thing
comes
I
down to
like
the point what you
oh,
want to do.
yeah. No, for sure. And sorry, the one other thing I wanted to throw in about the 3, I might be wrong, but I believe was wasn't that the horse that we ended up talking about
Yep.
from last week's card, and then it won and had a really, really good race? That's the only other thing I wanted to hit on was that, again, for an 8-to-1 horse to beat a horse where next time out, that horse that came in second that it beat ran a terrific, terrific race last week, dominated to win. I was a little annoyed because I was between battling if I wanted the 7 or 8 on top, and I went with the 7 in that race, actually.
Yep.
But yeah, no, so I like that about the 3 I wanted to have. But yeah, I know we want to get to the next race.
Yeah, no worries. But I'm going to bring up here Jim Pilars and Matt Miller both agree they like the 4. Emma Jane Wilson is one of the top turf riders at Woodbine. When she's coaxed to ride at Guilford Tampa, she's horses usually live. I completely see where you're coming from. It's just for me, the Woodbine configuration. Obviously, this gets into it a little bit more. The Woodbine configuration is a really weird track with a lot of like sweeping turns. So your normal America track is an oval. The Woodbine one is like it's like a trapezoid almost. It's really weird. If you want a good visual, look it up. It's actually really cool. But this horse is coming off really a lot harder spots based on what you're just seeing on the PPs. My thing is just, what are those 40,000? I mean, they're definitely better than 20,000 claimers at Gulfstream, but
Right.
it's just the point of this horse has a good post. This horse could be live. I will definitely agree with you guys. It's just you can go so many horses in this race. Got to pick one of them, but 12 to 1 is a very good price on a horse like this, I will say. Let's move on to the last race here. And as I switch them, I'm going to bring up the picks. We all are going with the 2 in this last race. Again, always for better or for worse. Granted, it's funny that it comes by the way of a $16,000 claimer on the synthetic at 5 furlongs. But we are all going with the number 2, Midnight Getaway, for Lionel Reyes and Daniel Pita. A little bit lesser known connections, but this horse definitely seems to be live. Charlie, I'll let you talk about it first.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a tough field, and I don't really mean a tough field like competitive. I kind of made it the other way around. Like, there's just like no one that's anything that
Yeah.
exciting. It kind of feels like an Arlington race, which I think Matt Miller touched on in the chat. Like, yeah, this is not anything too exciting. But yeah, no, I like what I saw in its efforts. The main thing I like is when I'm looking at a race like this where you're not really seeing anything too special. These aren't the cream of the crop that you find at Gulfstream. This is not the race that looks good. This is the race definitely for the legit handicappers who are willing to sit through this. It's going to be a brutal one. My grandpa likes to make the joke that those aren't even horses; those are dogs when you get to the races like these. But what I like from the 2 is, despite all of what I just said, is the consistency. You look at his last 3 races since he came back from October, and you see the 57, the 56, the 56. And that's what I'm looking for, honestly. When you're going with horses that aren't very good, if you can find any sort of decent speed figure, let alone multiple times, for me, that's an instant attraction because, again, it's very hard. And I kind of just feel like if he runs any sort, or well, I don't have a trick. I don't know if it's a guy or girl, to be honest. I'm not familiar enough with horse racing, to be honest with you. But if this horse runs anything like its last 3, I feel like it should win this race.
Yeah, and that's the way I saw it as well. Is those Bayard figures are really good. I completely get what Matthew Tremero just put in the chat. Looking for a stranger. I used to do that with Arlington races all the time, where horses that were not running in the same races as each other, I try to look for a certain fresh face. And as Matt Miller, I'll get to Matt Miller's comment in a second. But he runs really well. He technically wins. He crosses the wire first at 16,000 the last time he raced at this level, but got DQ'd to second. And runs 2 really respectable races and then comes back down to this level. I think the drop to this level is going to be really good for this horse, and that's where I'm thinking, it's going to go. The 4 and the 5 we have Red Gun and Explosive Wave. Again, not very good horses. We're just trying to chop at straws here. Charlie, you want to touch on them before we go into our pick 5s?
Yeah, no,
Pick
honestly,
4s?
nothing gets me that excited about the 4. It's just, the works have honestly been pretty decent. If you look at its last few races, again, nothing crazy, but compared to a lot of these other horses that have run good. I do want to hit on the 8 for a second, just because it is an Arlington guy.
Yep. Yeah.
Personally, I don't like Larry Ravelli. I can't stand him. Very frustrating guy to bet because you would always go to these Arlington races and he'd throw in these horses that had no business being in
Yep.
such low races.
Absolutely.
They go off at 1 to 5 and dominate. You can't make any money. So I'm not a Larry Ravelli guy. I do like the letters I read, but I don't know. I just feel like the fact that it's its debut and they're already putting them up for claim doesn't
Yep.
get me particularly excited. Not really the best thing to me when it's a horse's first race and it's a low claim and they're already trying to
Yep.
put it up to have someone else take it. Doesn't get me excited. Also, just Ravelli doesn't do what he does in Florida the way he does back in, I mean, obviously RIP Arlington, but at the time, back when he does in Arlington. He doesn't do as well in Florida. So I do have it as third. It's not on my ticket, though, partially because I don't like Larry Ravelli, and partially because we're not in Arlington anymore. But it is, I can see the appeal to the horse.
No, I get it. Matt says he's going to look like Golden Pal. I mean, look, you know Ravelli as much as we all do. The horse is going to probably rocket from the gate, win by 5, and we're all going to be, wow, this is just literally a repeat of 2 years ago when Arlington used to be around. Like, I completely get it, Matt. It really does seem like those really, one-timer. That's what hey, you took the words right out of my mouth there. But Howard knows that better than anyone. But all right, Charlie, let's go to our pick 4. Let's go to our pick 4s here. We're going to try and get through it a little bit. I'm going to read Patrick's off first just for the viewers. So people that like to follow Patrick's, I'm going to put it up. Patrick is going $18 for 50-cent ticket. It is 2-5 with 2-4-8 with 3-9 with 2-4-5. So no singles in this one for him, but he will be going 2 deep in 2 and 3 deep in the other 2. Charlie, you are going $24.50 on the pick 4. It is 2-5-12 with 2-3-4-8 with 3-7 with 2-4. Charlie, you want to talk about a little bit briefly about your ticket?
Yeah, so like I said, this was rough. I really wanted to have the guts in me and just set the tone, especially because I always somehow lose the first race. And then like last week, I hit my pick 3 because after I lost it, I decided to stick with what I had, made a little money. Yeah, I was like, you know what? If I'm already struggling with the first race every time for some reason, I don't have it in me to take a chance single. But I still like the 2, 5, and 12. I think they're very talented. With the what is it, the 8th race then. As we mentioned earlier, even though it's only an 8-horse field, it's a disaster. So many horses to go through. Even though I took half the field, I still feel like I might not get out alive in it. But I feel like there's a lot of real contenders. I know we can only highlight our top 3, but you had the 8 in your top 3. And I do think that I had to put it in there just because of what you mentioned. If it does get the right break and just shoots out like a cannon like it did last time, it is the type of field where it could end up winning. So I didn't want to take that risk. Then 3-7 in the next race, kind of what I mentioned. The 7 on paper should win. But I still do believe a lot in the 3. Again, it had a very convincing and good effort in its last race and beat a horse that came in second that ended up winning really nicely next time out. And then in the last race, again, I don't like Ravelli, and I don't like that it's the first time starting that they're already putting up for claim. So I just got it down to 2 and 4. Honestly, thought about singling the 2, but again, for how bad the horses are, I just couldn't single the 2 in that race.
Yep, I completely get it. And you'll see my ticket right now. It's going 1-2-5 with 3-7-8. I'm singling the 7 in the third leg and then going 2-4-5-8. So I do have Ravelli Matt in there if something nuts happens. Look, for me, everyone, if you've watched the show before or watched Howard's show, you know that I love to find a single and I love to press up tickets. This ticket on Friday, I will be paying $36 for $1 on, just for the sole fact of the record to put it out there. I could single the 2. I just like the 1 a lot in that race with the second time out upside personally. And the 5, obviously, for Wesley Ward. I am not getting beat by a Wesley Ward IRAD horse.
Absolutely.
But the 2 definitely, with that last buyer, definitely could look like a standout in that race. So I completely get the single talk. Second race, I'm just going with my top 3, 3-7-8. Nothing really, rocket science about that. The only one I'm a little scared about would be that 4 coming over from Josie Carroll, coming over from Woodbine.
Agreed.
But that horse is going to have to take to the dirt for me. But again, it has the pedigree to do so. And hopefully I can get my 7 home, and we'll ride it true from there. The 7, if you forgot, is Mosler's Image for Irad and Jane Sabelli coming off the claim. I just think that horse's last race will win that race, at least 8 out of 10 times. So especially if it can improve off the claim, I'm definitely going to try and single that 7, hopefully get through with Irad to the moon. And then the last race is one of those races. It's a broken record at this point for Gulfstream. Those last races, there was sprints or something on the Tapeta where, you just got to hope and pray. But again, if Ravelli shoots out, I will have it. So that's good. That's going to wrap up mine. It's just kind of the way of just trying to find that single and getting that single home. The only thing that would sway me from the bet is that if the 2 is taking so much money in the first leg, I'm not sure if it will or not. But if especially the nice thing about having those races in the front is you can watch the board. So watching the odds of the horses tick down and tick up. If the horse is like 3-5, that horse is going to be live. If the horse is taking no money and it's 3-1, then you might have, you might want to look somewhere else. But it's just that type of thing where, those races are nice to have in front. But again, let's just go over some things, some comments here, and then we will And Charlie, did you look at the Pegasus at all or no?
No, I didn't have a chance. I mean, if we pull it up, I'd be happy to just like see the field, but I know timing wise, I don't think that'll work.
No,
But
yeah, you're good.
the only thing I wanted to touch on though, real quick, is when you mentioned like the little hatred for the last race. Personally, at least last week, I really enjoyed the last race. Like I said,
win.
I
That's
played.
why you enjoy them.
Well, I enjoyed it because I did the pick 3 window, but also when I went to Gulfstream over winter break, the last 2 times I went, I hit big on the last race twice. And then also, again, not only though did I hit my pick 3, but I also decided to actually like keep up with those races and bet it. And I do just want to toot my own horn that I went with the 4-3 and the 4-3-1, which both hit. And I believe the 4 and 3 were both prices at the time. I think the 1 was the big favorite, I want to say. I think that was the one.
Yep. You got
I ran. Yeah, it was Uncork the Bottle. That's the one where everybody was on him. Which, I mean, look, I saw it, but last week was still frustrating though, because I don't know. I didn't like that first race that we had because I think my horse came second. He just didn't get. It was the one where what horse was it? The Mega City one. It just wired him. And I hate speed horses in a long race, even though I love Tyler. And yeah, we all were all over Therapist. I think somebody I thought might have sealed him or something. I thought Therapist was going to win easy and just didn't get the trip. So that was a frustrating one. So I don't know. Hopefully everybody who follows me, maybe this is the first time I get the first race right. I know the first week I got the last 2 right. The second week I got the last 3 right. So maybe this week I get all 4, even though it's the hardest week. I don't know.
But yeah, I completely get it. And like I said my pick on the on Howard's podcast, but I'll just give it out here for everybody just so they have it. I really wanted to go Cyberknife. I did go Cyberknife with the picks. It's so lukewarm for me. I went 10 12 5, I believe. Yes, I did. I went 10 I had 10 12 2, 10 12 2 5, 2 and the 5 can be exchanged. That's Cyberknife over who's the 12? O'Connor at 10-1 with simplification and defunded behind. There's just a lot of speed in the race. I'm hoping Cyberknife can get a good trip, work over from the outside, and be able to come over the top with it. But again, let's end with some comments here. Defunded is going to win. Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. There's no way. I mean, we've seen in the past, like last year, like Life is Good and Knicks Go. They ran 1-2. Granted, it's Life is Good and Knicks Go, but they ran right to the lead and ran away with it. And that's the way the Pegasus goes a lot of the years. So, I mean, if Defunded can get out, a little bit by himself and catch a breather, there's no saying why he can't win. Matt Miller, this is a good point for anyone that's interested. There's a $500 contest on Friday. If you've looked at it and you have some really good opinions, you can qualify for the Pegasus World Betting Challenge on Saturday, which again is a great way to play any strong opinions. So Matt, appreciate that. Thanks so much. Jim's giving out his pick. Jim's giving out his pick 4s in the chat now. Jim, where are you? You should come join, come booze.
Well, we need a third person tonight.
Yeah, right. But he's going to single the 2 with 578, 247, and 2489. I completely get it, Jim. Hey, if you hit it, cheers to you, my friend. I appreciate it. And Matt Miller, I'll end with this comment from Racing Downwind. Boozing, no losing this weekend, boys. Let's make some damn money. I love it. Racing Downwind. Again, we met each other at Breeders' Cup. You're a great guy. Thanks so much. But thanks so much for the comment. But it's a great weekend to make some money. There's no better weekend than this weekend to make some damn money. But again,
what a weekend
guys,
to have a weekend. Let's go.
That's right. It's a weekend to have a weekend is what the kids say. But again, guys, thanks so much to everybody for joining in. This has been an absolute great show covering the championship week for not only NFL championships, but for horse racing as well with the Pegasus World Cup. This has been Kyle Roscoe and Charlie Freeman and the ghost of Patrick Kuenzel. It has been episode 3 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a good night, and it's a great weekend to make some money. Good night, everyone.